This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Sierra 117, and you're listening to Podcast Unlocked, the world's #1 Xbox podcast. Now, finish this fight. Master Chief, out.
Welcome, friends. It's Podcast Unlocked, episode 480 for February 2nd. It's Groundhog Day, and we're seeing Shepard's shadow once again emerge, which we'll talk all about. I'm Ryan McCaffrey. Joining me is our permanent guest for the time being, Cam Hawkins. Cam, welcome back, my friend.
I am ready to talk about Mass Effect. I'm stoked.
You came dressed for the part, which I extra appreciate. That was not on your call sheet, my friend. You improvised that wardrobe, and I appreciate it. And also joining us, longtime editor-in-chief of US Gamer. She hosts an RPG podcast. She actually took our Mass Effect demo for us and saw Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which we're going to be talking a lot about. Kat Bailey. Good to see you, Kat.
Hey, good to see you. And yes, I'm the host of Axe of the Blood God, an independent RPG podcast. And I really want one of those N7 hoodies that they used to be giving out. Those were really cool back in the day.
Yeah, I had one of the gray ones, and it's lost now. I don't know. I wore it. There are pictures of me somewhere. I think. Oh yeah, even in that. There's like me and there's a baby picture with my daughter, and I'm wearing it. So that's I don't know what happened to that sweater though. Maybe EA will do another run of them. But yeah. So Kat, for the audience that may not be super familiar with you, even though you've been around the games industry for quite a while, introduce yourself real quick.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Kat Bailey. I like RPGs and I like sports games. I host a podcast about one of those things, which is RPGs. And I'm excited to talk about, to be here because there's a lot to cover on that front.
On both fronts. Yeah, it's it really, we were joking off air. This is the perfect episode to have had you on. I mean, it was already going to be great because you and I both saw Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and then the MLB The Show news breaks, and you're a big Minnesota Twins fan, big baseball fan. I'm the only one. Nobody else at IGN is, at least on the editorial team, is a big baseball fan. And then today, the college football news from EA. So we'll get to all that. In fact, you know what? We should just start with Mass Effect. I was going to start with the medium, because I said last week we needed to do our homework and everybody play the medium and talk about it. But Mass Effect is the big news, so let's just jump right in and start there. So, Kat, you have a very detailed, lengthy preview up on IGN.com right now, which I very much encourage everybody to read. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get gameplay footage of our own, so we couldn't do our usual thing and cut a nice scripted voiceover video preview. But you and I did pair that long preview of yours with a 10-minute conversation video. Now we have the benefit of having way more than 10 minutes. So top line thoughts. What were your overall thoughts of seeing a hands-off demo of Mass Effect Legendary Edition?
Well, when I took a step back from it, I was like, well, this is a lot like Bluepoint's Uncharted Nathan Drake collection, which was an exemplary collection in a lot of ways. It does everything it needs to do from a tech standpoint. It upgrades it to 4K 60 if need be. It fixes a lot of the gameplay issues with Mass Effect while seemingly being respectful of the source material. It unifies Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 and has a universal character creator. It brings FemShep from Mass Effect 3 into all three versions. And so if you just look at the bullet points, they're quite impressive. I think the fact that they led with the fact that it's going to be on Unreal Engine 3 rather than Unreal Engine 4, like stuck in my mind a little bit, because I was thinking, okay, so they're being as practical as humanly possible with this particular episode, with this particular release. They started it in June 2019, so it's been under development for about a year and a half. It sounds like Casey Hudson gave it the final push to get it out the door, and they're just staying as focused as possible, because I'm sure that their experiences with Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda are still kind of fresh in their mind.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a good point that you bring up. I think they just want. I mean, this project, whether by design or not, is probably their biggest bullet as far as that they can fire to try and turn their studio image, their reputation within the community around. Fair or not, which I think it's probably more fair than not. They're BioWare's reputation has taken a hit in recent years with, I mean, it really started with the ending of Mass Effect 3, and really just kind of got a lot worse. It snowballed into Andromeda, and then, as you mentioned, Anthem. But yeah, this clearly is a good chance for them to try and rehabilitate their reputation. Now, Cam, from what you did not get to see the demo that we saw and get the walkthrough from BioWare, but you've been seeing the coverage, you've seen the new trailer. What did you make of what you've seen so far?
I think that this is what I expected it to be. Like, I think the big question before seeing, getting the preview and from IGN and things like that, and is that what was the big changes for Mass Effect 1? Like, Mass Effect 1 is, almost across the board a very big difference compared to Mass Effect 2 and 3, when it comes to gameplay, the RPG elements, the whole 9 yards in that sense. So for me, and I think a lot of people are just like, okay, how does it look visually? How's the cover system? Because the cover system isn't great in the first game. How does the Mako feel when you drive it? Because that wasn't also very great in the first game either. So it's just more of those like, big cons of the first game that I was wondering how big of a difference that they were making it into the trilogy. And another thing that like we'll go over, I assume we're going to go over as well, which for me is a little bit disappointing, but I understand why BioWare chose to do so, is the lack of Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. I really enjoyed the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, and that being omitted from this collection is also relatively upsetting. But from everything that I've seen right now, this is about what I expected it to be. I'm just looking forward to playing it.
I didn't. Is Mako? Is it a Mako tomato thing? I've always heard it as Mako.
Mako? Did I say Mako? Did I say Mako?
Reactor.
I meant Mako. I didn't mean Mako. I'm sorry.
You've been playing too much Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's Mako in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Mako in Mass Effect.
Yeah, that's probably it.
There you go.
Well, Kat, why don't you speak right to Cam's first concern that he brought up there, because you covered this in your piece as well, and speak to what BioWare had to say about Mass Effect 3 multiplayer.
Well, so on the case of the Mako tank, they have definitely improved it. They've improved the physics from what they were telling me, and they've also updated the controls, and it sounds like it's going to be faster. So if you play the original Mass Effect, the Mako is kind of a nightmare to maneuver. If I recall correctly, it's constantly flipping over, like it's spinning around, and there are multiple set pieces within that game that are really dependent on the Mako. And in fact, in Mass Effect Andromeda, one of the big things that they wanted to do was rehabilitate the Mako to, various success. I think it ended up being pretty good, one of the positive points about that game. So they're doing what they need to do with the Mako tank, and I think that's kind of emblematic of the approach that they're taking with Mass Effect Legendary Edition as a whole. As for the multiplayer, I think that it's a little disappointing for sure, because I think actually Mass Effect 3 multiplayer is really good. And I mean, the fact that its quality is kind of spoken to by the fact that it still has an audience of people who are still actively playing it. But when I asked them about it, they said, well, we had so many questions that we had to answer about it. We had to figure out the questions of crossplay, which would have obviously been expected. How do we do right by the people who are still playing it, being able to import all of their progress into the actual collection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they were just like, well, the scope would have gotten out of control, and we're staying very focused. So that's why multiplayer isn't in there. And again, that speaks to the fact that BioWare doesn't want this to get out of control. They're very, very practical, and they are going to get this out of the door. Gosh darn it.
Yeah. And I think that sort of, it sort of everything points back to that. Cause even, the other way to look at that, like from a business reality perspective, Kat, you've been around a long time as I have. And, the reality is EA doesn't have, BioWare, I should say more specifically, doesn't have an unlimited budget for this remaster, because they know it's, they have a forecast for what the sales ceiling is going to look like on a reissue of this trilogy. And, it hopefully is going to do very well. But the reality is putting in multiplayer would have added time and scope to the project, which means it would have added budget. And what you were referencing early on, which stuck in my craw too, about Mac Walters, the project director of this, a longtime Mass Effect veteran at BioWare, when he started talking about, well, we talked to Epic about moving the whole thing to Unreal Engine 4, and he sort of explained why, but at the end of the day, it kind of was, well, that would have been too much work. And I don't say that to imply that they're lazy or anything, but they have a scope and a budget, and to have put in multiplayer and or moved it to Unreal 4 would have added, who knows how much time and thus how much money to the project. So I think you're really right. You've hit the nail on the head that they just didn't want to screw this up. And so it's stay true to it. And that's why I think the headline that you came up with for your piece is perfect. And it really sums it up well. Although I encourage everybody to read your whole thing. It's this Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It seems like it's going to be a good bit more than a remaster, but less than a remake. That seems like I think you hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, Ryan, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that BioWare just doesn't want to screw this up, because Mass Effect is one of their most enduring works. It has a huge fan base still. I mean, just how often do you see this big of a reaction and this big of a media push for a remastered reissue version? Not often. This is being treated as basically a AAA release. And so I know that BioWare is saying, we got to rehabilitate the brand. We need to get some momentum spun up for the next Mass Effect. We are going to not take any chances whatsoever by going to new technology. But at the same time, we're going to make sure that we tick every single box to make sure that the fans are happy. And at the end of the day, it might be the right approach, because the alternative might have been going full-blown Resident Evil 2 style remake. And I just don't see how they could have done that for a full trilogy. They would have had to do like the original Mass Effect released as a standalone thing, which might have been compelling on its own, but then suddenly you're talking about a multi-year project.
Oh, yeah,
2-3 years. Want that?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
For one game, yeah,
No.
exactly. Now, we should mention, as I've failed as a host to mention one of the key pieces of information, if you haven't seen it yet, the release date is May 14th for this, which means suddenly May feels like when really 2021 hits its stride from a gaming perspective, because you've got the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, you've got Biomutant, you've got Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil Village, and I think there's one more that I'm blanking on right now. There's another big game in May as well. Well, Deathloop, that's a PlayStation exclusive, so not relevant to this podcast. But May 14th is the date. So, Cam, I'm sort of curious, from you as a super fan of the series, what questions do you have about this that maybe Kat and I would be able to speak to, having got to sit in on this with BioWare?
Well, see, like your preview coverage answered a lot of my questions, which is more or less like how Mass Effect 1 has been updated. But I think that does the cover system feel like smoother? Because I know that they fixed in Mass Effect 2 and 3 where it's a lot more easy to like just latch on to a cover and then move, and it's a lot more it flows a lot better. In the first game, I remember it was like a lot clunkier in the first game, where you're like kind of standing up straight and it looks like really awkward. And when it comes to the combat
in the first one, just like in KOTOR, the game that the team did before that, I think the pausing went out the window for Mass Effect 2, if I remember right.
Yeah, you have to remember that the original Mass Effect came out like a year after Gears of War, and everybody was going, wow, cover systems, this is amazing. So everybody was just kind of trying to figure it out at that time. And Mass Effect, bless its heart, the original Mass Effect is so ambitious and yet so clunky. One of the things that I enjoyed talking about was how Kevin Meek, the environmental artist, was saying how the final set piece in the original Mass Effect blew his mind because it's set in zero gravity, and the level is rotating at 90-degree angle, and you have biotics that can throw people into space. And he was saying, what the heck were these people thinking when they were making this? I love it, but it really speaks to the ambition and the craziness of the original Mass Effect.
And that's why, Cam, I want to get you on record here. So first, Kat, just say what your favorite Mass Effect is. Kat, go ahead.
Okay, my Mass Effect 1 is the best.
That's the right answer. Good job.
No.
Now,
Like,
Cam,
here's the thing.
there's always multiple camps. Cam, it sounds like you're a Mass Effect 2 guy.
Mass Effect 2 is my third favorite game of all time.
Nice.
I love
Great
Mass
choice.
Effect 2.
Great choice.
Yeah,
I mean, Mass
absolutely.
Effect 2 is an amazing game.
And I think I do think that like I get why though. Okay, I'm not gonna like speak for you guys. Like this is why you guys like Mass Effect 1 more. But I can see like those that do like Mass Effect 1, like the RPG elements are much more depth than 2 and 3. Like 100% agree with that. A lot more variety in what you can do. Like I think Mass Effect 2, like my biggest complaint in Mass Effect 2 is the lack of customization that it has with weapon choice and things like that. But you know, so with Mass Effect 1, like that was not an issue, and it was one of those things. Like it was nice, but then it was also just like I felt like you got too many weapons to the point where like I was just like, no, this isn't better than the weapon that I already have, and things like that. And you know, I think that aspect, the RPG elemental aspect of the first game, is much stronger than 2 and 3. But I think when it comes to like the story and the characters and things like that, and you know, I think that Mass Effect 2 is the strongest. But that's, you know, that's how I feel.
Kat, tell him why he's wrong. I'm just kidding, Cam.
I think those are all fair points. I think that the original Mass Effect connects more readily with BioWare's past. I mean, there's a great moment where you can get the villain to shoot himself in the head, right? I mean, that is straight up 90s RPG Fallout stuff right there. But beyond that, I think that there are a lot of things little details that I love about the original Mass Effect that didn't carry over into Mass Effect 2 and 3. Like, for example, when you land on a planet for the first time with the Normandy, and the way that you smoothly step out the door and you're on a planet, right? There's a seamlessness to it. Whereas Mass Effect 2 adds loading screens and that kind of thing. That's fine and all, but I kind of prefer the Mass Effect 1 approach. And not only that, I think it tells a really good, complete story. In the way that you're interacting with the console. It does such an effective job of building up the universe. The final battle, like everybody talks about how the suicide mission is the best, and I totally agree. The suicide mission is amazing, but the original Mass Effect has a great final battle, great set piece, one of the best of all time, I think.
And just the whole process in Mass Effect 1 of earning your N7, of just that whole thing is so good. I think, you know, thinking about it as listening to you guys talk, for me, again, I've always preferred 1 to 2, even though, you know, 2 is great as well. And I love 3 also, but
I agree. I like 3 a lot too.
In fact, 3 really, like, it's basically up until the ending. Like, even I won't spoil it for anybody because there are going to be a lot of listeners out there playing it for the first time, but the lead up to the very end of the game, when you're, you know, there's a lot of people you're talking to in that run up, like, I think all that's amazing. But getting back to 1, listening to you guys talk about 1 versus 2, I think for me, it's 2 is really more about like the character, the specific like interpersonal relationships are amazing in 2.
Yes.
But the world isn't as good. Like, I always point to, I was always so let down in 2 by the fact that the Citadel, which was this sprawling, massive, it felt like the hub of the universe where everybody came to in the first one. It was literally a 2-room, like, mini level. Like, it was like 2 rooms in Mass Effect. So I was like, what the heck is this? But in Mass Effect 1, with the Citadel, with all the planets you land on, it really feels like it's all about the place. It feels like this space opera that it set out to be. Whereas I think Mass Effect 2, as I said, it's the interpersonal relationships are stronger, but the world isn't as good.
You didn't like scanning planets, Ryan?
Oh, I tell you, I got
Scanning planets. I love that mini game. I love that mini game. I legitimately did. I was just like, this is fun. Like, I can spend, like, I get it. It's like, it's very like tedious, but like for me, I'm just like, this is cool. And just like the feeling in the controller when you shoot the probe and then like you get the resources, it had this level of satisfaction that I just can't explain. But I loved doing that. Like, granted, it's obviously was a way to kill time, but I get that. But I mean, I really like that mini game. And when it comes to the characters, I think that's the main thing. It's just like, the whole cast of characters in Mass Effect 2 is just so great. Like Legion is my favorite Mass Effect character. Like he's one of my I love Legion. And I love the Elusive Man. The Elusive Man is probably my favorite villain in a video game. Absolutely. Martin Sheen's performance is incredible.
Evil President Bartlett.
Yeah, Morden Thane, like just so many like unique quotable characters. It's and just like how the development of those relationships go into 3 is just so great, like bittersweet to say the least. Without getting into spoilers, it's a really just a beautiful game when learning, like meeting those characters and developing their relationship with Shepard. It's so great.
Cam, you mentioned, you kind of hit on transitioning between the games. Kat, how is that working? The wrapper of the trilogy and how is it working to go from game to game?
Well, there's going to be a launcher. It's fairly simple. It has Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, and then when you finish the game, it boots you right back to the launcher, and then it's time to go to Mass Effect 2. It would have been kind of cool if they almost went like with a binge model with Netflix, where it goes continue on to Mass Effect 2, right? Because when you finish Mass Effect 1, I think maybe people might put down the controller, but I feel like you're so hyped up because Mass Effect 1 ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, right? You're just like, I want to keep going. Let's go.
Yeah. The story reveal is so good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's almost a little like, it sounds like it's going to be kind of like the Master Chief Collection, where it's, you've got everything in a hub menu, and if you were to play through Halo 1 in Master Chief Collection and then finish it, it's not going to it doesn't take you straight into Halo 2. You do come back to the menu.
And one last thing I want to say about Mass Effect 2, like literally one of the best openings to a video game ever. So good.
Oh God, yes. Especially when you find the Normandy on the planet and you're going through it and you're finding all the little props and everything. That was a DLC in the original game, but it was totally worth it, even though it was just this itty bitty little mission. And that's the thing with this Mass Effect Legendary Edition, is that it's going to have all the DLC. So you'll be able, and it's integrated seamlessly into it. So you'll be able to just go and do a lot of those little flourishes that were missing from the original game if you didn't spring for the extra money for Project $10 or whatever.
But it is. I was gonna say, it is worth noting that apparently Pinnacle Station will not be in the Mass Effect 1 remaster. That was
Really?
something something that was announced on Game Informer right before we started recording.
Oh, well, I know they have it's their cover story for this month. So
apparently they lost the code for it.
Oh,
they lost the code for it?
That's what they said.
Oh my God!
They neglected to mention that during our demo.
I'm sure. I wonder why.
All right. Before we talk a little bit more about Legendary Edition, I do. So we've there are two conversations to have in any Mass Effect chat. One we just had, which is which one's your favorite, and two, I want to go to each of you here. Paragon or Renegade or somewhere in between. Kat, you first.
I was a Renegon. So
yeah.
In the original
a Renegon.
In the original
Does
Mass
that mean
Effect,
you leaned evil, but didn't go all the way evil, or
you started evil and you went to good?
In the original Mass Effect, I was pure evil. Like I was doing all of the stuff with the bad stuff with Arachni, and the final decision, I was evil. Apparently, I was basically a human supremacist. It was terrible. But my character, who meets all of these alien crew members, slowly but surely has a change of heart and realizes the error of her ways. And over the course of the 3 games, develops into a paragon. So, also, I wanted to get cosmetic surgery in Mass Effect 2, because if you're going Renegade, it's like, ooh, I just don't like that whole thing.
You start to show it. Yeah, it's well, Cam, how about you? I'm curious now.
I think I've played through the trilogy at least 2 or 3 times at this point, I never have done an all Renegade run, but I always just go all Paragon. I don't know, just like I always like being the good person in games, but I definitely plan on finally doing a Renegade run this time around.
I'm in the same boat. I went pretty darn evil in the first and only time. I've only played the trilogy once. I played each game as they came out. and have just never gone back and replayed them. So that's why this will be my first time playing Mass Effect 1 since 2007. So I'm really looking forward to it. But
wow.
Kat, you really hit on it. Like, I mean, some of the stuff, and for me, it comes back to, because again, Kat, you mentioned something really smart about the cover system, how it came out a year after Gears of War, when like third person cover systems weren't really an established thing. And it's kind of the same thing for me with a game supporting your good or evil choice in a consequential story way. The first game that I remember really doing that was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which was made by the exact same team. It was their game before Mass Effect 1. And I went full dark side, because it's like, a game is actually going to let me do this, and it's going to have narrative consequence. And it was so much fun to explore where that went. So I did the same thing for Mass Effect. And I think it's Mass Effect 2 pretty early on, when there's a renegade choice to just like push someone off of a building. And of course you can punch a reporter in Mass Effect 1.
Yeah.
There's just like, it's fun seeing what crazy stuff the game allows you to do when you go full renegade.
I'm going to blow your mind really quickly.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 1 came out 4 years after KOTOR. So that's how close they are relatively on the timeline. And like, it feels like KOTOR came out way, like, much longer ago than Mass Effect. But actually, no, they're like pretty close to one another.
Yeah, you're totally right. It was summer of 2003 for KOTOR. I remember that well. And then fall of 2007 for Mass Effect.
And EA hadn't purchased BioWare yet at this point.
Right. It was a Microsoft published. It was an exclusive, first game exclusive. And so was the second one, I think. But then I think at that point, EA had bought them. And then they brought 2 over to PlayStation 3 not too long after, but the first 2 debuted on Xbox.
Yeah, if I remember.
Mass Effect. Go ahead, Cam.
I was gonna say, if I remember correctly, I think it had like a year's exclusivity deal for Microsoft or Xbox, and then it went to PS3 shortly after.
Yeah, the original Mass Effect 1 came out on Xbox 360 and was just initially completely exclusive, and then Mass Effect 2 comes out again exclusively on 360, but I think it was about a year later in 2011, because I remember covering it for GamePro, when the PS3 version came out, and it included the Genesis comics, which allowed you that even though you didn't have access to the original Mass Effect, you were able to go through your story and create your character. And actually, they've included the Genesis comics in this collection as well, which is really nice.
Nice. Well, overall, just seeing the reaction in the community to our preview coverage, to the new trailer, to kind of the general response here, it seems like people really are excited to play this. And I know I want to hear from each of you, because I'm really excited to roll this again. Because again, as I said, I only played them once as they came out. And Kat, you were talking about how, it was a really ambitious game on the 360, but it had the epic elevator rides, which I know actually you can speak to that. And the frame rate was 30 at best back in the original days. So I just can't wait to dive into this again, because by now I've probably forgotten enough of at least the little things that a lot of it will feel new to me again. And Kat, do you want to talk before we move on to the next subject? Because we've already been talking for 30 minutes about this. Just about some of the other quality of life improvements to Mass Effect 1 specifically.
I mean, the elevator one is a huge one, right? Because they were showing a side-by-side clip of, in Legendary Edition, it's done in about 14 seconds, and it's actually skippable. And they include the actual conversation still. It's just much shorter. Whereas in Mass Effect 1, it's almost a minute. And my brain was almost melting at how long it was taking. It was completely wild. And then they also add in the aim assists. That was a big one for sure, is adding in the aim assist. And then they still have the aim cone from the original game. So it's still stats driven, but it's a lot more forgiving. And they're definitely trying to go for that feeling that you had in Mass Effect 2, where the shooting is more skill based, but at the same time, trying to not completely dispense with what made Mass Effect 1 unique. So I think they're making the right call on that front.
And then what were some of the other little things? Like I know boss encounters were tweaked here and there, and or some of the few other things that they are
Yeah,
adjusting.
well, that was a big one. They've made some definite changes to, for example, they've added a lot more autosave points. There's a particular boss fight in the original Mass Effect where if you died, you got sent back quite a ways. And so you would have to backtrack a long way to get back to that particular boss fight. So they've like tweaked things like autosave points and that kind of thing.
Well, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, May 14th is the date to circle. I know there are people out there watching or listening to this that have never played the trilogy because there's always a new generation of gamers coming in. I envy you if you are going to be playing this for the first time at 4K 60, no less. So I guess the one other quick thing I'll note is it will run on the Series X, but it is not optimized for Series X. This is a current gen, or if you want to call it last gen release. It is for Xbox One, and the 4K 60, I believe, is on the Xbox One X as well, and then of course Series X as well. I presume, Kat, they didn't say, but I guess if you're playing on a base Xbox One, it must be 1080, well, maybe 10. I guess it's still 60, right? So
definitely not going to be 4K. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll look really good. I also, when I asked them about the PS5 and the Xbox Series X version, they said that beyond the faster load times and stuff, that they would have, quote, they would unlock a few more of the technological aspects if you happen to be playing on the next gen consoles. So even though there won't be an optimization patch per se, and they're not going to release a native version, it does sound like there will be some meaningful enhancements for people who are playing on next gen consoles, which is great because I'm going to play on my PS5.
Yeah, I'm going to play it on the Series X and throw that SSD hard drive at it. So that should help cut down those loading times in the elevators even more. All right, next up this week, baseball. If you don't care about baseball, you can go ahead and fast forward probably about 5 minutes through this next segment. But
who doesn't care about baseball? Come on,
I know, right?
It's America's pastime.
I know Cam is over there hitting the fast forward button. Like, let's move to the next segment. But I have been waiting for this day, and Kat, you have as well. For it turns out 8 years. 8 years is how long it's been since we've had a quality simulation baseball, Major League Baseball game on Xbox. MLB The Show, which had been announced last year as coming to Xbox. But what was interesting is at the time, Kat, they said as early as 2021. And I don't know about you, but when the pandemic hit and game developers, most of them got very justifiably slowed down by having to, everybody go home and everything's kind of slowed down. I thought that meant forget it. It's going to be 2022 for MLB The Show on Xbox. But no, here we are. It's coming now.
Yeah, I think that one thing that stands out to me about Sony San Diego is that they are a veteran team that have been around a very long time. They don't go anywhere. One of the things that you'll notice at EA is that there's a lot of turnover. Especially in the games, because you're making the same game basically over and over again, and people get burned out. But at Sony San Diego, people have stuck around, so they know their business, they know what they're doing, and they consistently put out a really strong product that has a ton of new features. And so I suppose on the one hand, I could have totally imagined the pandemic completely screwing up everything, especially with a next gen transition. They could have pushed it back another year, but they're like, nope, we're ready to put this game out right now. And that just kind of, I think, speaks to the way that Sony San Diego consistently kind of moves above expectations for what they're putting out on a yearly basis. Yeah,
in fact, I'm going to pull up while we're talking here, the just to illustrate to people how good this series is MLB The Show. Let's see. Last year's game, the Metacritic on it was 83. Let's try the year before that. It was 86. I mean, this is a series that is just consistently excellent, and it is It is happening this year, so it'll be out in April. Kat, is MLB The Show the best baseball game since what, MVP 05 maybe?
Well, it's the best sports game right now, bar none. I don't think there is a better sports game unless you count Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Actually, one of the things that always kind of
maybe.
I mean, it won best sports game during the Game Awards last year.
I guess it is an Olympic sport, so I guess I should shut up.
But if you look at, say, Madden, NHL, FIFA, and you look at their Metacritics, they're quite low. I think Madden was in the 60s just recently. And NBA 2K, while they consistently put out a really polished game in many ways, one of the problems that people have with it is the huge number of microtransactions. Whereas MLB The Show, it looks really good. They get all of the actual game day features. They do a really good job of capturing the feeling of being at each individual park. And they're really smart about the way that they handle their Ultimate Team mode. It's called Diamond Dynasty. It is connected into every single one of their single-player offerings, their career mode, their road to the show, that kind of thing. And if you look at just every single mode, there's not a weak spot among them. Every one of them gives you a baseball experience that I think is really meaningful and really strong. And I think that they have really good ideas on the regular. They had something called March to October, that came out a couple of years ago, where you basically could play through a whole 162 game season, but they would have specific moments where you're like, okay, now you're coming in and you need to close out the game as a closer. You're just going to do one inning. You're done. Great. You won. Now you have momentum. Your team is going to win a whole bunch more. And then at the end, you get awards for Diamond Dynasty. It's a really smart, really thoughtful baseball product.
And this is a series that has always excelled. I mean, the key components to any good baseball game is the hitting good, is the pitching good, is the fielding good, and it's great in all three. The show excels in all three, and you mentioned, the animations are always fantastic. It just looks so good. It looks so real, and so yeah, if you are a long-suffering Xbox-owning baseball fan like us, this is the year. It'll be out in, let's see, it's February now, so it's about 2.5 months away. MLB The Show will be coming day and date to the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X. It is worth mentioning, though, there's no smart delivery on this one from the Sony game. So if the only way to get, if you were to buy it for Xbox One, you would have to rebuy it for Series X later, unless you buy the more expensive edition, which is kind of how NBA 2K did it. So just as agree or disagree, that's the public service announcement. That's how it is being handled. Kat, how do you like your Twins this year?
I think the Twins are going to be good, but teams like the Yankees, unfortunately, are just always at that kind of next level. And I think the Padres, interestingly enough, have been making a lot of moves in the offseason. So I think that, per usual, the competition in the American League is going to be really stiff. I think the White Sox are going to be making a big run for the American League Central, but the Twins got this really good shortstop, Andrelton Simmons, who is an amazing defensive infielder. So I'm looking forward to that. How are you feeling about the Diamondbacks?
Less good every year. It looked like we were kind of on the up and up, and then Mike Hayes and the general manager really just went ahead and sold off during the 2020 pandemic shortened season. We'd gotten a couple of really nice acquisitions. Starling Marte wasn't working out. We weren't going anywhere. It's tough. We've got the Dodgers in our division who've literally won the division for 7 or 8 years in a row, and obviously they're the reigning World Series champions. So it's tough, but we'll see. I'm just happy that my Diamondbacks are run by smart people now, because for many years they weren't. They were run by Tony La Russa, who for being a Hall of Fame manager is a Hall of Shame general manager. So I'm just glad he's long gone. But
it's in Chicago now.
I was going to ask,
Chicago now.
I was like, are the Diamondbacks like the Jets of the MLB or something like that?
It's not that bad.
Okay, it's not that bad. Okay.
No, they've actually won this century.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they have Arizona Pro Sports' only professional championship, the classic 7-game World Series with the Yankees in 2001. one of the best World Series ever. And I say that not like objectively, that's not just as a Diamondback fan. That was an incredible series. But anyway, more sports. So, hey, if you don't care about sports, fast forward some more. College football, EA Sports, all the college video games stopped after the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit, which if you're not familiar with that, look it up. Basically, it was ruled in court that the NCAA and video game companies could no longer just more or less exploit the college players who weren't being paid anything by using their likeness, their stats, etc. And so EA Sports NCAA college football went away, as did the basketball games, which were pretty good actually. But Kat, NCAA football is coming back.
Wow, I'm surprised because I kind of always felt that the player likeness issue was going to be too big of a stumbling block. But just reading through ESPN's kind of rundown of everything that's happening with this, it sounds like actually EA claims that the reason that they canceled it in the first place was because a lot of conferences and schools were no longer as interested in sharing their logos and that kind of thing. So they were like, well, it can't be enough of a sim experience, so we're just going to move away from it. But now that issue has been resolved, apparently they're going to have something like 100 licenses for different schools. And they're still going to go back to having the player likenesses who aren't really the players. They're just auto-generated. But, wink, wink, nod, nod. They're definitely college football players, which kind of makes me roll my eyes a little bit because I think the players should actually be compensated for being part of this game. But it sounds like EA has struck an accord. Meanwhile, because NCAA went away and Madden had kind of a rough generation, there's a ton of nostalgia for NCAA 14. A lot of people remember it very well. And honestly, while it was really buggy in many ways, I thought that it had a certain character to it. I loved the career mode where you would, I think it was called Road to Glory, if I recall correctly, where you would rise up through high school. And they did such a great job with the high school stuff and getting into college and everything. And so I'm looking forward to having that back. They better have that back.
The interesting thing to me is on more of the logistics side, on the development, this is subjectively, I'm just kind of reading what I remember about the community, but I feel like the generally NCAA football was kind of seen as the better game compared to Madden. Was that a fair assessment, Kat?
I think that people are looking at it with rose-colored glasses, if I'm being totally honest, because in the day, people would complain constantly about how frickin' buggy these games really were. But I think that people are remembering it fondly because it was a time before Ultimate Team truly took over. NCAA 14 was the first game in that series to actually even have Ultimate Team. And it had really strong single player modes. It had, as I already mentioned, not just a great career mode with Road to Glory, but a really terrific franchise mode, whatever you would call it in college football. And people have been really disappointed by Madden's franchise mode for quite a while now. And I think that there's some hope that it can get back to where it was. But again, I think people have a little bit of rose-colored glasses because when NCAA 14 was around, it was very buggy and it had its share of gameplay issues. It's just that was the last one. People haven't been able to play it for quite a while.
I'm where I was kind of going with that was I'm curious to see, like, I would imagine that a lot of the development team members from NCAA college football folded into the Madden team. And now, I wonder how many of the original developers from NCAA from, like you said, 8 years ago will now work on this new one, or if they'll just need to staff up with some new folks. Cam, are you a college sports fan at all?
College sports fan, really. More basketball than anything, which is weird. I only care about the NFL when it comes to professional sports, but then when it comes to college, I care about basketball.
Yeah.
But no, I think regarding the whole NCAA Madden, which one was more beloved, I feel like, because I remember kind of having that idea, that feeling that people like the college football games as well, but I also don't feel like, I think that was kind of during the dark ages of the Madden games where they just really weren't that great at all, and they kind of picked up in recent years despite still not being where we would like them to be. But yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, it's cool for those that are about college football that's coming back. I personally am still waiting for EA Sports Big to return. I want NBA Street. I want NFL Street. Like now that this Mass Effect remaster's out,
Come
SSX,
on.
yeah. No, now that this Mass Effect remaster is happening, the only remaster I want is NBA Street Volume 2 remastered. Like
Oh, that would be really good.
the best sports game ever made, if you ask me. So I'm like, that's what I want. But you know, dream big.
You'll find a lot of sympathy among sports gamers.
Yes. Yeah, those were good days for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, enough. Sports talk is over. I promise. So everybody, come on back if you left. Let's talk about an equally exciting topic: Microsoft's earnings report, money and numbers and dollars. But no, the news is all good here. Xbox hardware revenue is way up as Microsoft reports record earnings this past quarter. The gaming division specifically is up 51% revenue wise. The company as a whole, all of Microsoft, so not just Xbox, but everything, a record-breaking $43.1 billion in revenue. In the most recent financial earnings report for the period ending December 31st, Microsoft shared that revenue increased by 17% to reach that $43.1 billion, and $15 billion of that is profit. So it's just straight into the bank, pure profit, $15 billion in a single quarter. Hardware saw the biggest growth thanks to the launch of the new Xbox Series X and S. Microsoft says the gaming hardware segment grew 86% thanks to the new hardware, though the company hasn't shared exact numbers. I find that telling because, as we know, the S and X are totally supply constrained. They would be selling many more if they could actually get them produced. So that makes that number even more impressive. Meanwhile, revenue up 51% overall in games, with Xbox and services revenue up 40%. The growth has been attributed to third-party titles, Game Pass subscriptions, and first-party titles. According to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella during the conference call, Xbox Game Pass, and here's the underlined part, Xbox Game Pass now has 18 million subscribers. The numbers also don't take into account Microsoft's ZeniMax acquisition, which it says it is expected to close later this year. Cam, first up, 18 million subs. That is some impressive growth.
Yeah, it's insane. It's 3 million more than the last time we got an update. That's incredible. And you know, the $15 billion in profit, like, you know, we thought how big of a acquisition ZeniMax Bethesda was last year, and they were just like, well, already made that money back, like, and almost double that. So it's just like, you know, so seeing that they're still looking to quote unquote make a Bethesda-sized acquisition as well this year is it's like, you know, there's nothing to worry about. They got the money. So that's exciting. And yeah, 18 million is insane. They, you know, again, like, Game Pass is their forefront. It is the poster boy of their platform at this point. And they, you know, they just want to get as many people as they can on that subscription service as they can. And you know, it obviously is working, like, whether it be like hey, join Game Pass for $1 a month, or, you know, and then go from there. There's so many ways for them that they've been trying to get people onto Game Pass that I think they found a lot of success with. So, you know, it's just kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they're probably going to continue doing the same type of direction moving forward.
You hit on something in there that I think is a really good bit of context for people to understand the rapid growth of Game Pass. You said it's up 3 million from the last quarterly report, which means they're adding 1 million subs a month to Game Pass at their current rate. I mean, that is wild. Kat, as somebody who's a little more platform neutral in her day-to-day life than I am here with Unlocked at IGN, is Sony at risk of kind of giving Microsoft too big a head start before launching some kind of genuinely apples to apples kind of service?
I think so. I think that Xbox has really shown that it means business this generation just by all of the acquisitions. And I think Game Pass is just a really good service. I have been playing my Xbox a lot this year, and that's a large part because of Game Pass. I'm going out and like we're doing a game club right now, and we're playing Final Fantasy VIII. And hey, look, Final Fantasy VIII's right there. Yakuza Remastered, the entire collection, right there. Control. It was, and I think that Sony's offerings just don't quite compare on that front, and it's a little confusing to me why. Like Sony had plenty of time; they knew that this was coming, right? We knew that Xbox Game Pass was a thing back in 2017, and they already had the existing infrastructure with PlayStation Now. So honestly, I'm a little baffled why they haven't matched up with Xbox in terms of Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, I don't say this to discount Sony, because obviously, if they launch something and they decided, well, we can put all of our first party stuff in here too, just like Microsoft did, and their first party portfolio is so strong that would certainly entice a lot of people. But there is a point where it's as of now an 18 million subscriber head start, and look no further than I think a fair comparison is the 360 versus the PS3 came, there was a 1 year head start for the Xbox 360, and that did not end that super well for Sony. Not that it ended badly, but Microsoft was right. They were equal. They were on equal footing when, if Sony had launched the PlayStation 3 at the same time as the 360, that might have been a different story for the generation. So it's kind of strange to me to see history kind of repeating itself, and Sony not having launched something similar. But you got to figure.
I think one of the things. I think Sony is reluctant to put their first party games day and date on a Xbox or like a Game Pass type service, whereas Microsoft is a lot less shy about that. And so I don't know, maybe that's why they've been holding back a little bit, but I don't know. I think that Microsoft has opened up a pretty clear competitive advantage with Game Pass for sure.
Cam, how many more subscribers is Microsoft going to add this year, do you think? I mean, take a reasonable estimate. I mean, because you got Halo at the end of the year, and you've got all the Bethesda stuff. Like Starfield will be the first probably major new release, whether it ends up being a surprise that's this fall or maybe more likely Starfield's next year. But all that Bethesda stuff's going to start rolling into Game Pass on day one as well.
Yeah. I think a big reason as to why we got such a, like they got so many subscribers like in such a small time is because of the new consoles. The new consoles coming out, like people hop on to Game Pass. I think like by the end of the year, I could see another maybe 5 million. Like I think that would be like a reasonable amount. Like it's not too much, but I don't think it's like too low either. Because who knows? Like it could stay steady. But I definitely think that like for the next few months leading up to the holiday season, it's gonna decrease a modest amount, but then like pick up again during the holiday season. So I think 5 million. I think by the end of the year, they'll hit 23 million. Like they'll announce 23 million.
So you think, I mean, it's a reasonable analysis that kind of in this drought we're in now. I mean, you look, there's really nothing major coming out for Xbox for really, I can't think of anything until May. We talked about how many big games are coming out in May. There's not a lot between now and then. So yeah, maybe you're right that it's going to kind of slow down a bit with not a lot of new releases. So Game Pass continuing to do its thing. Go ahead, Cam. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they're still like so, like Xbox putting their first party games on Game Pass day one is great. Like it's insane. Like to think about still to this day. But like there's still so many good games, like third party games that are on Game Pass. That like granted they don't stick there forever. Like there's some good ones that are actually like have just left or like going to leave soon. But like still there's so much goodness on Game Pass that like I don't think it's gonna be that drastic of a decrease. But like I do think that I feel like I would be like shocked or like surprised like if it got to like 25 million by the end of the year. That would be like wow, like Game Pass is just like unstoppable.
Well, we'll
I
see.
I
Go
don't
ahead,
think
Ken.
it's out of the realm of possibility just because we don't know what's coming out in the fall. And you know that Xbox is going to be loading up as much as possible. And making a huge push. So honestly, depending on what they have as their headline holiday releases, maybe it could. Maybe I don't know. Like I don't think Halo Infinite's going to make it out this year. We'll see. But if they could have
Wait.
that in day and
Wait,
date,
You
wait,
don't
wait.
think Halo Infinite's going to make 2021?
we'll see. We'll see. It's going through. It's been going
Big
through a lot of
prediction
development troubles. Yeah.
Whew. Wow. I would happily take that lunch bet with you if
Interesting. No, I think Microsoft really wants to get it out. Don't get me wrong. It's just that there's been so much turnover on the development team, and they are very concerned about not having crunch. Apparently, like this has been a thing that they've been talking about, and honestly, after the reaction that it got last year, it sounds like they're retooling it on a kind of a large level. So I don't know. It might not be out until early 2022. We'll see.
Well, they announced a few days ago that like the game is playable in a complete sense. Like all they're doing now is polish.
Polishing.
So
Okay.
it has to come out this year. Like if they're just in the polishing
fair.
phase
That's fair.
for 10 months, I'm gonna be like, what? We have a problem here.
All right. In a bit of bad news, we got a little bit more time here. Passing along the PSA, Ninja Theory's Bleeding Edge, which is only 10 months old. You may remember that that multiplayer 3v3 kind of a melee combat game. It will no longer be updated. The support's gonna come to a halt on that one, with Ninja Theory saying, quote, with the studio now focusing on our new projects, Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, Project Mara, and the Insight Project, we have decided that there will be no further content updates for Bleeding Edge. The game is still playable on Xbox and PC. Thank you to the fans and teaming up and causing chaos. And I guess the thing I would want to say here is, I mean, it's a shame, but it's kind of it's a really tough world out there. I mean, when this was a game that was not terrible, but not great either, and fine just doesn't cut it in the multiplayer space these days. I mean, it's so cutthroat when you're competing for people's time and attention against Call of Duty Warzone, Apex Legends, Fortnite. I mean, it's tough to get any attention. Cam, had you even picked this game up at all at any point?
And the reason why that is, I like Ninja Theory as a developer, but I'm a big Overwatch player, and this was just like, oh, this is like melee Overwatch for the most part, and I was just like, this is not going to remotely compete. Like, it just wasn't. It was one of those things where like, I always appreciate Ninja Theory because they always make very unique games, even though it is like kind of a Overwatch. I don't want to say Overwatch clone, but like it's comparable to Overwatch in the sense of its design. That like I just was like, this is going to be dead on arrival. Like this, and it wasn't dead on arrival per se, but like it's just not gonna meet. It's not gonna compete. It's simply enough. So it is like sad to know that they're not getting any updates for the dedicated community that plays the game, but they're moving that team to work on like Hellblade, which is definitely their like top tier project right now. That is going to help Xbox like kind of be put in the good graces of like those that think that like, oh, Xbox has like no good exclusives and things like that. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing.
Yeah, and you case in point, you just said like, well, you play Overwatch, and this was not appealing enough to you to pull you away from that. And that's exactly the kind of uphill challenge that it faced. Kat, had you given this a shot at any point along the way?
Remember that it was a passion project for the director who, if I recall correctly, she was really into arena-based games because I talked to her for a preview event. And Ninja Theory has a very kind of open-ended pitching process where they're happy to greenlight a lot of like little projects, little things that people are individually working on, and this is one of them. And when they got picked up by Microsoft, it ended up being a nice little game that they could just throw day one onto Game Pass. And now it's kind of run its course, and that's that.
Well, yeah, it's a shame, that anything has to wind down like that. But as you guys kind of alluded to, I'm happy to see those resources get put into Hellblade 2 instead, which is a game that I think a lot of people are looking very forward to. All right, time for the loot box segment. This is an open-ended, just a listener will ask an open-ended Xbox question of the panel. If you guys just click the watch stream right there, you'll be able to see this. Our question comes from Micah in Augusta, Georgia. Go ahead, Micah.
Hey, Unlocked crew. Micah from Augusta, Georgia here. We're always talking about how consumer-friendly Xbox is, but we fail to talk about one of the most consumer-friendly things they do, their rewards point ecosystem. Why is that? Because on the app behind me with Microsoft Rewards and the Bing app on my phone and those Game Pass points, those aren't meaningless. They all add up in a pot that you can redeem for things like Xbox gift cards. Within the last year, I've already got a $50 gift card, and I'm almost to my second $50 gift card, which I can use towards things not on Game Pass, and yet nobody talks about it. All you have to do is get achievements or take some surveys or keep a streak of weekly quests going. What's the deal?
Well, that is an excellent call from Micah, because I wanted to play that more because I feel like Micah has figured out the system, and that's a PSA for everybody. I mean, like Cam, have you dabbled in any of the rewards stuff that Microsoft's got going on?
Oh yeah, yeah. I recently actually just started. I enrolled in the kind of monthly redemption to get a $10 gift card every month, using like 10,000 points. And yeah, if you play Game Pass specifically, getting those rewards, those points add up quick. Those points add up real quick. And there's a great number of rewards that you can do. Some are like, some sweepstakes and things like that. But it's like, oh, here's a month of Game Pass for this many points. Here's a $10 Xbox currency for this many points. It's a really great system that I do feel is overlooked and underappreciated, but it's really great.
So there you go, Micah from Augusta. Excellent loot box question, as my voice lovingly cracks right there. That was fun. We'll hit it in post. No, we won't. It'll be left in there, and the internet will mock me, and it's fine. But if you have a loot box question for the panel, something about Xbox that you would like to ask us so that we can discuss it, we take these now as Yappa video comments. So just go to this episode's page on IGN. So just Google IGN Unlocked 480, scroll down to the comments, and you'll see right above the comments, you can leave the Yappa video comment. You don't need to make a Yappa account. You can sign in with any number of accounts that you probably already have one or more of, and just leave your video question for the panel, and I'll pull another one for next week's show. And now it's trivia time. Cam knows about this. Kat may not. So, Kat, we do Xbox trivia every week. The audience sends it in. I screen it. I pick a good one, and the audience tries to stump the panel. We keep score all year, and then the winner gets a listener-made trophy. In fact, the 2020 trophy just arrived at our office. So I'm looking forward to presenting that to Brandon Tyrell as soon as we can get that into his hands. For this week, the question comes from Johnny Pomato, whose gamer tag is Pomadovich, and he asks, this is a really good one. I will say I got stumped right here, so we'll see how you guys do. Which game ended with the potentially missable opportunity for an achievement that could only be acquired if you, quote, took a minute to think and avoided touching any button on the controller for 60 seconds as you reflected on all you accomplished during the game? So was this achievement found in Assassin's Creed 3, Spec Ops: The Line, Prince of Persia, this would be the 2008 version, or Enslaved Odyssey to the West, talking about Ninja Theory. Cam, I'll go your way first. I don't know if any of this rings true or familiar to you at all, because it sure didn't for me.
I'm based off of its narrative and how I know just kind of the themes that it plays with. I'm going to go Spec Ops: The Line.
All right, I see where you would go with that. Kat, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Cam just because Spec Up the Line is a really dark game that kind of goes out and subverts the first person shooter, and it's really memorable for that reason. So I could totally see it as having that particular achievement. Though my second choice would be Enslaved Odyssey to the West, just because that game is so gorgeous, and I could totally have imagine them making you think about, completing the journey and being like, time to reflect.
Well, both well-reasoned arguments from both of you here. You're sticking together ultimately on Spec Ops: The Line. It was actually Prince of Persia, believe it or not, and I went and looked this up, and I went and found it, and sure enough, yeah, it was the 2008 Prince of Persia. So yes, Johnny stumped us all. So bravo, Johnny, that was a good one. I mean, to be clear, with these trivia questions, I don't pick questions that I think are just completely something that no one could possibly know, like some crazily obscure thing. But this I thought was just interesting enough where maybe one or more of us would have gotten this achievement or heard about it. But no, Johnny stumped us. Great work. So if any of you out there have a good Xbox trivia question, feel free to send it in for consideration on a future episode. You can email it to unlocked@ign.com. Please include the question, 4 multiple choice answers. Note the correct one in your email, and we'll of course play again next week when we'll see if more of the regular panel is back. But that will we're kind of winding down here. Kat, it was great having you here, number one. Number two, where can the audience find you if they want to listen to your podcast, follow you on Twitter? I know you're on Twitch as well. This is the time for, now that you've won over a lot of new fellow Mass Effect 1 fans, or maybe the angry Mass Effect 2 fans want to come yell. I'm just kidding. No, but where can everybody say hi to you at?
Hi, I'm Kat Bailey. I'm on Twitter at @the_Catbot, and you can listen to my podcast, Axe of the Blood God. It's on Spotify and wherever you find your podcasts. I also have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/bloodgodpod. And this might be of interest to Xbox owners. This month, we're doing a Pantheon Game Club where we're playing through Final Fantasy VIII, which is currently available on Xbox Game Pass. And at the end of it, we're going to be recording a big old episode in which we break down everything about Final Fantasy VIII and determine whether it deserves to go in the Pantheon. So check that out.
I like that. That is a fun. I like a video game club, like a book club. That is clever. I like that a lot. Cam, how about you, my friend? Where can everybody find you? What are you up to?
Yeah, I'm you can find me on Twitter at CamFinalMix, and I write for DualShockers.com, and you can follow DualShockers at DualShockers, and I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/CamFinalMix, Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Excellent. Well, and then as for me, I'm on Twitter at DMC_Ryan. On IGN.com, I haven't written anything lately, but Kat has. Please go read her very thorough, in-depth Mass Effect Legendary Edition preview. It is excellent. You probably don't have to watch the video that's tied to that at this point, honestly, if you just sat through the entire podcast, because we just covered all that and more, but it is still worth checking out Kat's preview. There's a lot of great detail in there. And what else? Let's see here. Trying to think of what. I mean, I guess we didn't mention real fast. There's a new update for Sea of Thieves out that allows you to play at 120 frames per second on Sea of Thieves, Whoa. Which is pretty cool. So it's 1080p 120 or 4K 60. Those are two excellent choices, whichever way you'd want to go on that. And I guess shout out to IO Interactive, who Hitman 3, they announced, has already made back its development costs after just 1 week on sale. They say, we've been really happy with the Hitman 3 journey. It's been a labor of love between our fans and everyone else at the studio. As the developer and publisher, we're immensely proud of that we can say Hitman 3 is already profitable. We have recouped the total project costs in less than a week, which is really cool to see because A, it's a great game. B, they're on their own. And it's like when you're tied to a big publisher, you've got trade-offs, right? If your game underperforms, you've got that safety net of the publisher that your studio won't necessarily close down. But at the same point, when it super succeeds, Big Daddy publisher gets a larger taste. But when you're all on your own, like IO is now with Hitman, you're sinking or swimming, and it's really great to see them absolutely swimming like Michael Phelps here with with the success of Hitman 3. So that is really great to see, and we wish them well because they're on to that James Bond game now.
Super excited about that.
Yeah, they even said that it has the potential to be a trilogy. Let me see if I have the exact quote right here. It was, oh yeah, we also came up with a completely original story for their Bond game, and you could easily imagine that a trilogy could come out of it. And they did confirm something we talked about a couple shows ago, that they will not be having one of the like existing Hollywood actors who's played James Bond featured in the game, which makes sense because, you know, they're a smaller, they don't have the super crazy deep pockets to pay a huge fortune to Daniel Craig or one of these other folks to use their likeness. So look for a all new video game version of James Bond. But that will about wrap it up for Unlocked 480. Cam, you were noting we're 20 to go till the big 500.
Yep, 20 to go. I won't be there for it, but it's exciting regardless.
Well, we know you'll be watching, listening. Because yeah, gosh, I don't even know. 20. That's like
probably
still
August,
away, something like that. Yeah, it's a little ways out, but we'll get there.
Preemptive
we'll
congratulations.
Thank you. That's assuming
July.
that, you know, nothing, a meteor doesn't hit the Earth in the next 20 weeks.
Knock on wood.
Still
but
got
anyway.
time.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just, you know, we'll keep podcasting as long as the world still allows us to do so. But for Kat Bailey and Cam Hawkins, I'm Ryan McCaffrey. This was Podcast Unlocked, episode 480. We're into February already, and yeah, check out, you know, go play Hitman if you have not already. There's a good reason why IO made back their money, because it's really excellent. Speaking of Daniel Craig, though, the second mission of Hitman 3 is kind of like Knives Out. It's really good.
It's really good.
Ooh.
Really good.
Okay, you got me. Knives Out. Okay.
Everybody should go play it. For Cam and for Kat, I'm Ryan. This was Unlocked 480. We'll see you next week.